Hello everyone, Ryan from Arcade High here, back from quite a long hiatus. I apologize. Pat and I have been working very hard on a new album, which will be out shortly, but we are back and hopefully in full swing. I'd like to actually include Pat on some of these new videos that we'll be releasing. I want to do one hopefully every week, if not every other week for sure. And we're going to be finishing up the Synthwave series. This is video 5, and we're going over mixing. Now, mixing is a huge topic, and we'll just be scratching the surface here in this video. We won't be going over EQ and compression, although we touched on EQ and compression a little bit in the previous videos. There's a lot more to mixing than what we'll be going over here. We'll mainly be going over organizing your tracks and getting your volumes balanced. At the end of the day, that's really what's most important when it comes to mixing. And I know a lot of you might think this video is pretty basic, but these first 5 videos in this Synthwave series are meant to be just that. It's meant to be the basics, the essentials. You can take these 5 videos and get a track going from start to finish. Hopefully, eventually, we will actually make an entire 5-part series on mixing alone, because we probably could fill out 5 videos on just mixing. So if you guys want that, please let us know. So the track we'll be working on today is called Phone Lines, featuring Haley Stewart of the band Dead Astronauts. It is off our new album called Kingdom. And I cheated a little bit with this because this project file is actually the final mix that Pat and I did. So I took the track, I moved a bunch of the faders around, kind of got them all wonky and out of place, and so we can then go through and organize the tracks and get moving with the volume faders to get things kind of back to where they need to be, or hopefully. We'll see how it goes. But before we listen, let's just do some housekeeping. What I love to do, what Pat and I have been doing on this latest album, is actually organizing a lot of our tracks. And I'll kind of briefly go over a lot of this. If I went over everything, it would take an entire 30 minutes just to explain that. But I'll kind of go over basically what we like to do. If you can see here, we actually have folders set up for each of our instrument types. So we have a drum folder, a synth folder, and a Vox folder. Now you could theoretically have as many folders as you'd like. We opted for 3 basics: drums, synths, Vox. And you can also see that we have things color-coded. So all of our drums are blue, all of our synths are in orange, our bass is in this sort of maroonish, reddish color, and then our vocals are in pink. And I'll briefly show you how to do that here. To make a folder, let me actually get rid of this folder so I can show you how to create it. You want to select all the drums that you have, or all the instruments that you want to put into a folder. So I'm going to click on one of these. I'm going to hold Shift and then click on the final one to select them all. And then if you right click on any of them, we can create track stack. And then we're going to do folder stack and create. And it's going to make its own folder. Now you notice that everything disappeared. That's because it is flattened that at the moment. So if we want to click on this little arrow here to bring it back down, double click on that, rename it, whatever you'd like to name it. And that way you can kind of hide them, if necessary. If you only want to be seeing, let's say, the synths, work on the synths, you can do that pretty easily. The other thing is colorization. So if you click on any track and make sure that your cycle is off, so that when you click on the track, it actually selects everything and not just things within that cycle. But when you click on a track and select everything, you can press Option C to bring up your color palette. And then from here you can color it whatever you'd like. Sometimes we used to like to do kind of a rainbow of colors all the way down, but we eventually got to a point where we needed to kind of organize things so we could visually look at it and see where we are at any given time in the song. And we just went down the line with that. The other thing too I'd highly recommend is deleting unused tracks. Just get rid of the clutter. We have the snare here. We're going to delete that. I'm going to delete this. Anything that doesn't have anything on it. Delete these unused basses. That's being used. That's being used. These here are part of the vocoder. They're raw vocals that the vocoder is feeding into the vocoder, which is creating that vocoder voice sound. So we have to keep these here, and that should be good. So there we go. So we have a little bit neater, a little bit cleaner. Oh, wait, I missed one here because these here are muted. They were right-click muted, which is another option that you can do. If I right-click these and hit mute on and off, they will come back. And so we can get rid of those as well. All right, so there we go. Much cleaner, much easier to look at. So let's take a listen to the mix here, and then we'll dive in.
I'm dreaming of phone lines. But we're on hold. Dreaming of phone lines. But we're on
Hello? I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight.
Okay, so listening to that, I'm hearing the vocoder in the beginning sounds super loud. The main vocal lead by Haley sounds a little quiet. The kick sounded a touch loud. Things weren't sounding quite right. My biggest suggestion when it comes to mixing for all of you is to not overthink it. This is not rocket science. You're simply balancing the tracks so that you can hear everything and that nothing is sticking out. Before we actually start to move faders, I'm going to show you how to create buses for all of your tracks, groups essentially, so that you can actually have single faders to bring down all your synths. You know, a single fader to bring down all your synths, a single fader to bring down all of your drums or up or down. I'm going to press X on the keyboard to bring up my mixer. I can go left and right here at this point to see all my EQs, all my plugins, all the faders. I'm going to go all the way to the right, and you can see here I have a bass bus. I have one for synths. I have one for a Vox. I don't have one for drums yet. I deleted it to kind of show you how it's done. So I'm going to come up here to my top drum, which is kick low. And when I come over here, this button here is telling me where that instrument is going. This kick low is being routed directly to stereo out. I'm going to click and hold on this. And I'm going to instead go down to bus and route it to bus 3. And I'm going to make bus 3 my drums bus. Now you can see already here, I already have buses for certain things. There's a percussion reverb, a bass bus, synths, Vox, synth reverb, a New York Vox, which is a parallel compression. We'll get into that at a later tutorial. And then I have my sidechain here, which we went over in the previous tutorial. So I'm going to go to this empty one here, bus 3, and immediately it's going to bring up my bus right here to the right of my kick low, my instrument that I routed to it. And at this point, I'm going to click down here and name it drum bus. Actually, you know, I'm just going to call it drums since I have that for most of them. For bass bus, I'll actually rename this bass just to keep it simple. And I can actually click down here on drums, hold Option and C to bring up my colors. And I'm going to make it the same color as the other ones here, which I'm not even sure which one it is here. So there we go, that one right there. So now we all have these here. Sidechain I also included in that color because it's kind of going to its own bus as well. So from here I now have my drum bus. I'm going to move on to kick high, also going to stereo out. I'm going to click bus drums. And I'm going to go to each one. Some of these are already being routed to bus 3 because, like I said, I adjusted them so that I could actually show you how it's done. Yeah, see this one here is already bus 3, bus 3. Yeah, this one should be good. Okay, now if I play this back again and I move this drums fader, you will hear what happens.
I'm dreaming of phone lines. But we're on hold. Dreaming of phone lines.
So you can hear there when I turned it down, all the drums went out of the track. You may have noticed that you heard some reverb of the snare a little bit, and that's because we actually have a separate percussion reverb on a bus. We'll get into VCAs and all that stuff later, but we're doing some basic stuff now. Got your drum bus, you got your one fader to move down your entire drums. So I'll move this back to 0 here. And you would ideally move through and do that with each group of instruments. So we like to do one for bass, one for drums, one for synths, and then one for any vocals that we may have in the track. At this point, we can actually get down to actually moving some faders and getting the mix to sound correct. So starting any mix, what I like to do is start with the kick and the bass. Now for this track, I have 2 kicks. We have kick low and kick high. So if you listen to kick low alone, it sounds like this. Just kind of a real low thump, and then kick high is a higher click. Super filtered, but together they kind of create more of a balanced kick. And so I'm going to actually take a look at these, make sure there's no automation on them, and start adjusting these just so they sound blended together. So the kick high sounds a little loud. I'm going to bring that down a little bit. That sounds pretty good for now. So the one thing that I will mention about this mix here specifically is a lot of these movements I'm making are just gut reactions within my headphones. That's how it should be when you first start your mix. If you overthink it, it'll just make things complicated and you'll become frustrated. The next step, once I have the kick where I want it, is to solo the kick in the bass and then try to match. Alright, that sounds pretty good. One thing I mentioned before is I was listening on my headphones. Headphones are typically really not recommended for doing mixing. It's okay if that's all you have. Just make sure that you're listening to that track on many different systems, small systems, big systems, in your car, wherever, so you can get a really good perspective. So now that I have that, I'm going to play all the drums, and I have my drum folder here so I can conveniently just hit this little solo button next to the drum folder and play all those. I'm going to hear how these sound. I'm actually move over here to where things kick up a bit more, and that snare filter gets pulled open. Okay, sounds pretty good. Notice how I was moving quickly. You know, I'm muting things like the kick high to see, okay, am I hearing the kick high enough? You know, I brought the bass in. Okay, how does it sound with the bass? You know, and over time you'll get, you know, faster and faster at this. So let's move on now to the synths. And I'm actually going to do... I'll just bring in the elements one by one here. So actually I'll keep the drums, do the bass, and I'll just bring in these here. noticed here, I have automation on both of these. That's indicated by this yellow line. Automation will be an entirely different tutorial, but essentially the automation here, what it's doing is it's automating the volume to go up and down as to wherever I have these yellow lines. Pat and I use tons of automation on our tracks, and it's a super useful tool when composing. But because I have this automation here, I'm unable to move this slider on either of these down, because if I do, it'll just simply jump back up or down depending on where the automation goes. So I have to use this here, which will bring the overall automation level up and down. Sounded all right. So let's listen to everything and hear how things sound.
I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines.
So that sounds pretty good, actually. I expected to have to mess with the vocal volume, but that didn't sound too bad here in my headphones. Let's listen back here with the vocoder.
I'm dreaming of
Loud. Yeah, there we go. Vocoder is super loud. Let's bring that down.
I'm dreaming of phone lines. But we're on hold. Dreaming of phone lines. But we're on
Hello? I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight. I'm dreaming of phone lines, but we're on hold. You couldn't connect to your instincts tonight.
All right, not a bad starting point. Listening back to that, I could probably bring up the drums and the bass a bit to give it more punch. This is probably totally different than the mix that Pat and I came up with. At the end of the day, this is all just subjective. Get it to sound good to you, and then get feedback from people. Get feedback from musicians, see what they think. Get feedback from people who don't know anything about music. 99% of your listeners who are going to be listening to this stuff don't even know what mixing is. So don't stress too much about it at the end of the day. And like I said before, I know I glazed over a lot of this stuff. We'll eventually dig deeper into this in future videos. But it's so good to be back. Thank you guys for your patience. Thank you guys for hanging in there. We got some awesome videos coming up. We're going to be bringing Pat on to show you some cool stuff. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you want to see. We want to make videos that are going to be useful to you guys. I'm going to end this video off with a clip from the actual final mix that Pat and I came up with. So enjoy. See you guys next time.